Welcome everyone to Wikispore Day. Today we're celebrating Wikispore. It's sort of semi-first anniversary. I'm Richard Nipel, user Pharos, based in New York, and I sort of helped start Wikispore based out of a picnic experience I had approximately 1 year ago today. Hello, Jan. Jan, unmute yourself, please.
That will, of course, help. I'm Jan Ainali, user Ainali on the wikis. I help out with the Wikipedia Weekly Network. I'm also active in the Wikimedians for Sustainable Development user group, and I run a pod called Wikipedia Podden in Swedish as well.
Thank you. Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Fauconnier from the Netherlands, active Wikimedian, mainly active on Wikidata, Wikimedia Commons. And I will tell a bit about one of the spores that I've contributed to later today.
Thank you. Yaron.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yaron Koren. I'm mostly from the Enterprise MediaWiki world. And I'm going to be talking about cargo later today. That's an extension I wrote that may end up on Wikispore.
Thank you. Ilana. Welcome. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ilana, and I'm the founder of a small wiki. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges in maintaining small wikis and how projects like Wikispore can help small wikis.
Thank you. Denny, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Denny, user Denny on the wikis, and I recently joined the Wikimedia Foundation to make a new proposal happen called Abstract Wikipedia, which we are also going to talk about today.
Thank you. And H. Turkey, I apologize, I'm not trying to pronounce your first name, but please share it. Oh, welcome. You can turn on your, yeah.
Hello, you hear me?
Well,
okay, so I am 17 Turkey. I am from Tunisia. We're working on kind of stuff like Wikidata stuff, maybe Wikipedia also as well. So I'm hanging around and trying to make proposals to promote the movement in Tunisia and outside.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I should mention that people can comment on YouTube or on Facebook and on Twitter, and we will be able to put selective comments live. So we got hello, folks from Querying Wikimedia account. Dr. X, hello everyone, looking forward. Jim Henderson, hello everyone. A couple years ago, had an idea about touristic bike routes and whether that fits on Wikivoyage or somewhere else. If you are commenting on Facebook, you have to give authorization to StreamYard so we know who you are. Otherwise, it'll give you a comment as an anonymous commenter from Facebook. Yep. So yeah, I wanted to start off, and the first item on our agenda is the history of Wikispore. So if people are not familiar, and I imagine most people are not familiar yet, certainly let me share my screen. Oops. Okay. So Wikispore is a proposed new Wikimedia Foundation project. It is the idea is sort of a wiki farm that can be we can develop new ideas for the Wikimedia movement, things that don't quite fit in Wikibooks or Wikisource or somewhere else, places where we can have a little bit more flexibility. Wikispore was started at a picnic last year. The idea for it, we had a picnic in New York, and we had some talks about we had some strategy talks as part of the strategy movement about how to include more diverse opinions and how to work more with different free culture groups, and the idea of smaller experimental places seemed to take up some steam and be possible. And eventually we got some help at Wikimania in Sweden, where some helpful technical people helped us develop it a bit. Maybe I should share what Wikispore is. So Wikispore bears 4 fruits, and I thought I would share that with you today. So we have, sorry, okay. Here are the 4 fruits of Wikispore. Wikispore has a botanical theme, as you may have noticed. Wikispore's 4 fruits are a wiki farm for specialized subject areas, a narrative base for Wikidata topics that don't fit inside other Wikimedia Foundation projects. For example, all of the paintings, all of the books, all of the people that are not fully documented, a knowledge repository for oral knowledge and from primary source documents, and a testing ground for new sister projects. So that's basically what Wikispore is. Wikispore has a proposal page on Meta, which you're welcome to join, and we're going strong. And any thoughts or questions about the history of Wikispore or how we're hoping to make this a bit of a group conversation? So people on screen, feel free to chime in. Ooh.
When did it actually launch? Did you mention that?
Yes.
You got the 4 fruits there. Sorry.
Yeah, we got the 4 fruits. So thank you, Lane. That's the contribution from user Lane Raspberry. So we had
none of them's a raspberry, ironically.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We had our picnic on July 14th, Bastille Day last year, and on July 15th, I started the meta page, and we were able to start the wiki after Wikimania last year, which was in I think July or August I think it was August last year in Sweden. We got some help from people who were Wikimedia developers, and so we've been hosted on the Wikimedia Cloud server, which is a place where tools and things are usually hosted. And so that's our interim host for now. It's a little bit funky. It's a little bit different than the normal Wikimedia universe. So, for example, we don't it doesn't store your account information there. You only log in through OAuth, but that actually makes it a little bit better because we're not in charge of your privacy. The Wikimedia Foundation is.
Yeah.
Sorry. Any other Wikispore thoughts or queries? Obviously, it's a sort of confusing and strange topic. The idea is to make. So this is if people want to share. This is the page on Meta. We have 49 supporters on Meta. You're welcome to be our 50th. This is the grand prize of Wikispore Day today. You can be the 50th supporter of Wikispore. So far, we don't have opposition, but who knows? Yeah, and it's a little bit of an unconventional idea. The main idea is that the Wikimedia movement has become a bit ossified. There haven't been a lot of new things started lately. The last new thing started was Wikidata, and we happen to have the person who started it in this room. So
I think WikiVoyage came after.
Maybe slightly. They were like about the same. They were like almost the same time, and that was a bit. One was adopted and one was sort of in-house, I guess.
I guess you're not counting Wikilambda. It's too soon.
Oh yeah, I guess yeah.
Well, it hasn't launched yet.
Let's let you explain.
It hasn't launched yet, so.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. If anyone, will Incubator still be used? That's okay. So I'll answer that question. So yes, will it still be? Yes, Incubator will still be used. It's being used currently. The idea behind Wikispore is to provide something like Incubator for new projects, for new ideas, new genres, rather than new languages. There have been proposals in the past to make Incubator allow new genres that never succeeded. So thought it best to start a new project where that's explicitly the purpose, and we might hopefully replace the sister projects process, which has been rather defunct for most purposes for the last 10 years. Hopefully provide a way for people to start out their ideas and play with them a little bit. The idea is to foster experimentation, creativity, and informality in that order.
I really think that's a great idea that should be stressed more. That currently the process basically says you can come here, make a proposal for a new project, and then us being Wikimedians, we're really good at ripping apart proposals and being negative about it. Whereas on Wikispore, we could actually just, go ahead, try it out, and see how it grows. And if it grows well, awesome. Let's do that. Exactly. It's just what Zico says. It's not very welcoming to new wikis, to new ideas. We had this initial explosion in the beginning, which was rather uncontrolled, where a lot of things like Wikispecies, Wikiversity, Wikinews, etc. happened. But then for a long time, it was basically almost nothing. Then we had 2 more projects, Wikidata and Wikivoyage, and then again for a long time, nothing. And the process isn't particularly well defined. It's not particularly well followed. And there's also not much participation in that. But instead of trying to convince someone into try, I think for many projects, it just makes sense. Like, let's start it. Let's try it out. If we have enough people working on it, awesome. Let's just do it. Let's just go ahead and make it bigger. Then we can spin it out as a proper project. But right now, the process is you make an idea. You might not be very good at expressing yourself. You might not be very good at selling. Then also, if once a project is alive, it has a chance of kind of pivoting to the right space, which can't happen with a dry proposal. So I really think that Wikispore allows this place where people can try out more things, go ahead, and particularly if you don't require a lot of development work, and so we can have many more ideas bloom than currently is the case.
Thanks. So Zico also asks if it's a bit of a wiki farm, and the answer is yes. It is a wiki farm. There's a bit of that sort of inspires the botanical element a bit. So we're wiki farmers, and we're on the wiki farm. And the idea is to make it a little bit of an easy start, because not everyone can successfully host their own wiki for a long period of time. It's a difficult thing, and especially for people with less resources or people who have busier, it's often harder to sustain such a long project. And it's nice to provide little spaces to experiment. So it is a wiki farm, and yeah, we'll share some of the little fields that we're tending in the farm soon. I think it might.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry. Well, it's not a wiki farm in the sense of letting you create additional wikis. It's
yes,
all one wiki at this point.
At this point, it's one wiki. There is a capacity to create additional wikis. We have 2, just the test wiki and a normal wiki now, but we do have the capacity. Probably as time goes on, something will start on as a spore, then it'll become its own wiki, then hopefully it'll become a Wikimedia Foundation project or something like that. And I think this might be a good time to share some of the spores that have been developed or have been ideated. And I think I want to zoom in a little bit on them. So as you so each topic area or / genre has its own name and its own namespace. It's often like a short name, and the idea is it has certain information that wouldn't quite fit on Wikipedia, but should be somewhere, and that might have be structured in a particular way. And I want to let's go through them just to share what people have been working on. First is the art spore. This is the idea of all of the artworks and all of the art topics that have been developed over time. There's been quite a bit of work on this recently in terms of trying to flesh out particularly things like contemporary art practice, artist networks, and pop-up spaces. Also, there are a lot of artworks that don't quite fit they don't quite fit on English Wikipedia or other language Wikipedias, that we might have individual pages for, say, a mural in your town that wouldn't necessarily have a page on Wikipedia. And feel free to chime in if anyone's participated in any of these wikis, in any of these spore ideas, or has other ideas for them. One of the more promising but somewhat underdeveloped ones is the biospore, the idea of a biographical dictionary of people who we don't have, or perhaps not notable enough under the current rules for Wikipedia, although I'd like to change those rules as well. And we have some interesting things that have been developed there. So here's George Gregory, who was a Civil War veteran and whose stepson became a significant figure in the Baha'i faith in the United States. And he's mentioned in his son's article, his stepson's article, but only in a glancing way. And Wikispore provides a way to give a bit more information about his life, which is an interesting life.
Am I correct that his biography here is only based on primary sources, so it would not fit in Wikipedia?
Yes, it's largely based on primary sources.
I see, yeah.
So we have people working on civil society Spore. So the idea is a number of civil society organizations and institutions might not necessarily fit on Wikipedia. It might be developed. We've had some thoughts about how should we deal with crisis issues in terms of the current COVID crisis, crises around racial justice, and in a broader sense, I think that there's been some thought about developing information on COVID economics using Cargo, which is Yaron's extension, which he'll share later. We've also been looking at some wiki-adjacent resources. So there have been a few, actually. I want to give a shout out to people who, in the Wikimedia community, who have developed interesting resources not on Wikipedia or in Wikimedia Foundation official projects because they have like the experience of the Wikimedia experience, but they haven't found the proper outlet there. And it's nice to just give them a shout out. So user HireEdge developed COVID-19 Relay, the Coronavirus Tech Handbook developed by user Superior, the Corona Extra Newsletter developed by user Kielana, the Science-Based Coronavirus Updates, the popular Facebook group started by user Darova, and the COVID-19 India dashboard. I do think that the Wikimedia movement has a lot of has had a significant impact from crises in the past. Particularly, I think September 11th, 2001 was a significant push toward developing a viable online web encyclopedia, because people suddenly learned that history was not in fact over, and that there was a lot of the world that people still need to learn about, and that could be useful for society. Okay, I just want to share event Spore. So there's an idea of covering events, so like a chronicle of events in a way that, so for example here, World AIDS Day 2019, this page which I worked on develops all of the things that happened that were the observances made for World AIDS Day 2019, whether those were part of the World Health Organization or observed by cultural institutions, or different countries developing new policies, or the movement of the AIDS quilt back to San Francisco, and as some other anything that cover this in the whole. This is the type of thing that you would often find as important in the daily news, and you often find in like one or two sentences about each year and say a holiday or commemoration on Wikipedia, but you wouldn't find it in such detail. And I think it could be useful, as say people go to click on the Google Doodle for a particular day. And the nice thing about holidays and commemorations is you can plan them somewhat in advance. So they're the easier news stories in some sense. So there are things about World AIDS Day that you could look up several weeks before. The idea, one concept which I haven't quite worked on is having fact checking. So the usefulness of fact checking, which is done by not a lot of different institutions, but Wikipedia does it in some informal ways, but we might consider doing it in more official ways. And feel free to chime in if people have thoughts, please. Geospore, the idea is that every geographical object that is on, like, for example, an OpenStreetMap map, and I think we should be more closely integrated with OpenStreetMap, should have, it often has a Wikidata item. It might not have a Wikipedia article. It could have a description. It could have a narrative page as well. So things like parks, archaeological sites, ponds, rivers, popular rocks. There are a lot of nice historic rocks. Guide Spore is the idea of having sort of a specific guide to a particular area. So with sort of a thematic guide. So this actually fits a bit like Jim's suggestion here about having guides to touristic bike routes. It also fits a bit to it overlaps a bit with the Gynopedia concept in terms of having a guide to women's health and gynecological health in different locations.
It also overlaps a little with wiki books, no?
A little bit, but it hasn't been developed so much on wiki books.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just share here. The idea is one of the concepts is libspore, to have something for all of the books and publications that probably exist somewhere like the Internet Archive. And if we could just create a little wiki button on the Internet Archive, it would be nice to have for them to all have a Wikidata item and to have a little bit of narrative that people could work on about that. So that is another potential thing that people could work on. Queerspore, which people have been working on developing LGBT topics. Actually have someone who hopefully can join a little bit, share about a bit about that. The idea of working on organizations, particularly historical organizations. Sports, we have sports is not, you know, is not necessarily the most undercovered area on Wikimedia, but it is there is some level of detail that's missing, and it might be a good place to experiment, especially things like individual games, which we don't usually cover. And if people want to work on it, I want to give them a chance to. Unispore, focusing on universities and academic topics. For example, there's someone who's worked on the guide to MIT. So there was a guide in the 70s. It's like the Whole Earth Catalog of MIT, and it was and you know he's still around. Is a guy named Alan Wu. He's a Wikipedian, and they published this guide for about 30 years. It hasn't published recently, and so we're talking about, can we make a wiki for this? And I think that would be great. There have been a number of university wikis over time, but they've been like, you know, made by students in like their spare time, and they haven't been connected as much. Yeah, so it'd be Dr. X asks if they'd be interested in linking some Wikispore information to Wikimedia projects. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that it could be a supplement, as Lane said. So perhaps we can include more in primary sources, perhaps some small aspects that are more regional research, but more of like a supplement with things that we can't quite include, that don't quite fit the current notability criteria. Let me just go through the last of the spores. And the visual story spore, of course, which has been developed primarily by Sandra. And has some nice examples. And maybe I'll just show a page here, and then Sandra can share soon, perhaps, as I talk about the visual stories and how we can embrace them and work with them. This is covering the hat-making industry in Curacao. You'll see it's linked, of course, to Wikidata item. The Wikidata item is linked to it's linked to Wikispore ID. It's also linked to the Commons category. One of the ideas is that there are a lot of images of things that haven't been fully documented, but we can provide sort of an audiovisual guide to them. Okay, I think that's spores.
That's really cool.
So what's the process? If I want to set up a spore, how do I do?
Oh, thank you for asking, Jan. Right now, the process is basically you edit the spores page and you add it.
All right.
There's no rule yet, and if it is not a totally wacky idea, then I will create a namespace for it. And so it's a sort of, if it has some level of reasonableness, then we'll create a namespace for it. Probably we should develop a more sophisticated or a little bit of a harder process in the future. But for now, please just add it to the front side of the page. And in fact, if anyone wants to do that now, you can do that now. Also, if you want to edit Wikispore, Wikispore does use your account. I would encourage anyone who's listening now, if you want to sign our guest book, we have a guest book like for the Wikispore Trail, and you can sign up and share, you know, your interest in Wikispore and some things you might want to work on, including if you want to start a new spore. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? I think we'll maybe move on to Sandra's presentation soon, because she has the last spore.
Yeah, just a general thought. I think it's really interesting. This it sort of ties into what a few people have said, but you know, of course, anyone can create a wiki on any of these things. and people have been able to do that for the last basically 20 years or more. But you know, I guess there's sort of a psychological hurdle toward any random person just saying, I want to create some really general knowledge type of wiki about one of these huge topics, like a biographical dictionary or encyclopedia for the entire world. So this sort of, I don't know, I guess you could say it gives people permission to have these kind of lofty aspirations.
Yeah, we want to give, giving permission is the right word. You know, so often an issue in Wikimedia world at large is that people don't feel that they're invited. I don't think that we need like great technical innovations. The idea is to make a social innovation. So, you know, I'm not a technologist. Right. I mean, you know, but you don't have to be a technologist to be involved with Wikispore. And the idea is just sort of create a new way of welcoming people, and realize that there are a lot of things that can be done with wiki software that we have not done yet, and that'd be interesting. Let me just share a message here. Yeah, and I think we will we'll transition to our first macro talk. If people want to follow on the doc, this is our doc. It's Docs Plus, and we have a 10-minute talk scheduled for now, and that's going to be by Sandra, who has been working on the last Spore mentioned, because they're alphabetical, the visual story Spore. So Sandra, if you want to pull up your slides, please do so.
Sure, I will do that in a second. Maybe just a quick introduction.
Yeah,
yeah, indeed, in response also to what already has been said, for me, Wikispore is just an open playing ground for ideas that you may have that probably don't fit in other wikis, and at least not in other wikis of the Wikimedia movement. So for me, the reason why I actually started doing this visual Spore that I will talk a little bit more about is I'm an art historian. So I love reading and I love Wikipedia, and I think Wikipedia is fantastic, but it is not very media friendly. And one of the things that we see and hear a lot is that it would be great to also offer, and Wikimedia Commons also has that, to offer more multimedia rich content. And as an art historian, as someone who loves visual material and audiovisual material as well, I've always felt very, you know, interested in experimenting with that specifically, and seeing what kind of place that kind of audiovisual material can have within our you know, Wikimedia movement. So that has been for me the reason to use Wikispore to experiment. For me, it's really an open playing ground. As Richard explained, I just created a page because I you know, I had the inclination of just trying to do something, creating a page about the hat making industry in Curacao, and then we invented a Spore for it. So that's basically what you can do on Wikispore. A bit of background behind the specific Spore before I open my presentation is I've been working on a project for already some time in the Netherlands on the Dutch Caribbean region. So the islands of Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, then Suriname as well, the region of Suriname. And what I've noticed is that it is typically one of those regions in the world where there might not be a lot of published sources, but there are many visual materials. Visual materials in cultural heritage institutions. There are large photographical collections of the, you know, the history of the region. And so actually a lot of knowledge, or at least a lot of like hints about the history of the region is actually fits into images. It's more like stored in images than in written text. And one of the, you know, examples where I saw that is this hat making industry in Curacao. It has been a very important industry on the island of Curacao, especially in the beginning of the 20th century. I did my research trying to write a Wikipedia article about it. Didn't find a lot of published like reliable sources that would, you know, hit, you know, the NPOV and sourcing requirements of Wikipedia, but I found a lot of images that were donated by cultural institutions and that were actually on Wikimedia Commons. So that's why I created this specific page, which then became part of the visual story Spore. And now I will launch my presentation. basically, my presentation contains just a bit of thinking about it, because I created this one page. It's just one page in this course, so please create more and help experiment with this thing. But I see other examples in the Wikimedia movement as well. So I've compiled some inspiration just to get people thinking about it. I will share my screen. Just a second, please. Here we go. And I will launch my presentation. I also included some screen videos, so I hope this will run very well and smoothly, and otherwise I will just open new tabs. So this is the page I created, which is basically just a gallery, as we can do it on Wikimedia Commons. We can create galleries with many images. Typically on Wikimedia Commons, galleries have small images. That's the basic setting of galleries, but I love to see images more closely. So what I basically did here is I've gone through many image donations done by cultural institutions over the year on Commons, which contained many images related to the hat-making industry in Curaçao. And basically, I just arranged them chronologically. I clustered them by theme. So you have one about, you know, portraits of people doing this kind of work. There's a category of objects created, and there's a category of not just hats, but other woven objects. And I've done nothing else but arrange them chronologically. I chose them as kind of a diverse selection. So it's really a hand-curated selection. It's not all the images, but it's just a selection. And as captions, I used descriptions that were available in the cultural collections. So I did not invent any captions or anything. I just added captions that were already part of the images. So you could say, is it original research? Probably in terms of Wikipedia thinking it is, but I didn't invent anything. In that sense, I just replicated some data that had been provided by cultural institutions. Yeah, this is just one example of what a visual spore can be. I just want to give some more. I did this because I was also inspired by other people's work. So it's definitely not my invention to do this, but others have come before. So standing on the shoulders of giants here, actually, I've been very strongly inspired by, I think, a pioneering thing that the Wikiloves Africa community has done, or the people organizing Wikiloves Africa. Wikiloves Africa is one of our annual photographic competitions. You have Wikiloves Monuments, you have Wikiloves Earth, and you also have Wikiloves Africa and many others. Wikiloves Africa in 2017 had also a part of their photo contest, which wasn't just about photos, individual photos, but also about photo essays. And so the competition was about just collecting photos that belong together and telling a story with them. What you see here, or what you saw here in the short screen video, is a video essay about people who are creating soap out of seaweed in Zanzibar. There's others about creating thatching for roofs, etc. So it's actually, you know, demonstrating a process with beautiful images and some captions. So it's media-centric storytelling, you could say. Another example, yeah, so actually, basically, a lot is already happening. I already mentioned galleries on Wikimedia Commons. On Wikimedia Commons, besides the category system, people also create hand-curated categories. But as you see in the example here of Mahatma Gandhi, it's actually a quite rich gallery. It's very, you know, well built. It's hand curated as well. It's chronological in order with photographs of Gandhi. But yeah, this uses the standard feature, you know, the standard settings of the gallery feature with very small thumbnails. So it doesn't look very attractive, although, you know, the technology is there to do it. You could imagine that you would also make it with bigger images, that you would use a little bit more, you know, narrative around it, which can be very, you know, this is really a mainstream topic. So it's not a non-notable topic like hat-making industry that doesn't have published sources. This is really about the biography of a person. So one step further of thinking could be, what if you would rewrite the, you know, the biography of Gandhi, which is now on many Wikipedias, but would do it with an audiovisual starting point? If you would do it with images or media files first, and build a story around those, rather than doing a wall of text on Wikipedia. So for me, visual stories or audiovisual content shouldn't only be about an underrepresented content. It can very much be about that, but it can also very much be about mainstream topics. A next example is one of the things I've been like experimenting with myself and other people as well on Wikimedia Commons is doing dynamic galleries, Wikidata-driven ones. So basically, these are galleries that are not hand-curated anymore, but they are created based on a Wikidata query. The one that you see here is the Paintings by Paul Klee gallery. That is a dynamic gallery. As soon as someone adds a new painting by Paul Klee, or another painting from a new, not yet present collection by Paul Klee to Wikidata, automatically this gallery on Wikimedia Commons will be improved and will be enhanced without any human coming into the mix. So it adapts based on the data that is available on Wikidata. And one other example that I really love myself, that I've created together with user Jane023, Jane Darnell, is one that is a little bit about underrepresented topics. This is a gallery of self-portraits of women. Not really, it's probably hard to write a Wikipedia article about this, I can imagine, but it's super interesting to see this as, something that has evolved through history. So this gallery basically collects also, again, chronologically, all the self-portraits that women have made throughout history that are known on Wikidata. Starting from the earliest one, which I think is a 15th or 16th century one, up to the contemporary ones. So yeah, with the latest ones, you see that we don't have images anymore because of copyright. Yeah, that's Jane. You're here. Yes, I'm very proud of that one still. I think it's a super nice one. So a lot of work has already happened on other Wikimedia projects, and I think a lot of the work can happen on Commons, although the galleries on Commons are really they are showcases of certain images, and I think you can also do narrative based on top of it. Jim, to answer your question, I think probably yes. I don't know, maybe, but maybe it's also good to see it as a topic that, although it doesn't have reliable sources, can have a little bit more flesh on the bones than just being a gallery on Commons, if you understand my point. So it can have a little bit more narrative around it, even if we don't have a lot of published sources. But yeah, it's a good question. Maybe some of this can really very well fit on Commons. I don't know if Commons is open to it. My impression is that I'm always careful with big images on Commons because people tend to like it. Apparently, the community tends to like the smaller image galleries. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Commons is super open to this. So if that is an outcome, that would be very successful for me, actually. We could use Commons for this. Yeah, one more experiment that I want to showcase is another thing I did during a hackathon. I've created also Wikidata-driven galleries and put navigation on top of them to actually bring together our public domain movies, basically creating Wikiflix like Netflix, but free, haha. So just to show that we have a lot of amazing material on Commons, which is really not getting, just through the design of our projects, getting the attention that it deserves. Actually, on Commons, because of the hard work of many, many volunteers, we have like a treasure trove of public domain films. It's fantastic, but there's not really a very nice way to browse them and to actually use them and see them as you would use Netflix. But what if we would have that potential, that possibility? The same would go for music, classical music, but also popular music. What if you could really, like easily and pleasantly browse it by genre, by artist, etc., and just listen to it in playlists? For me, the audiovisual spore or the visual spore or whatever you want to call it is also about experimentation for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've been thinking about the name also a little bit, like the visual story spore was the first name we came up with. But as I said, for me, it can also very much be about not just marginalized topics, which would be great to do. I think it's awesome to experiment with that, and I really want to continue doing that. But for me, it can also be very much mainstream topics, and it can just be, it can also be reliable knowledge in Wikipedia style, but that has, starts from multimedia, not just from written text. So maybe we should call it audiovisual article Spore or whatever. I don't know. Let's discuss further. We can definitely. That's the nice thing about Wikispore as well, that it's not set in stone and it's a small community that can think together. And I really hope that more people will join and help think about this. Some more thoughts. So for me, just repeating, this is really for an aim to think about an alternative way of spreading knowledge, free knowledge, that is not the wall of text of Wikipedia. However much I love reading, and however much I love reading Wikipedia and editing Wikipedia, I think we also have so much material and so much potential of doing, such interesting things with the wealth of audiovisual materials that we already have on Commons. We have 60 million of files, and there's really, as I said, it's a treasure trove that we don't use enough. I don't know. I think I said most of these things already. I think strong sourcing requirements can actually be there. You can actually have audiovisual content that has the sourcing requirements of a Wikipedia, but the audiovisual material itself can also be a source. So it can go both ways. And one thing we're missing is non-free material. So I would also welcome thinking about what do we do with the wealth of non-free material on our projects that we don't really point to very strongly yet. I want to emphasize also that this specific Spore for me is really about experimenting with the genre. I think other Spores are more about topic areas, like the LGBT Spore and the event Spore. These are more about topic areas that may be underrepresented, and this is more about the form that it takes. And I think both can really overlap and work together. So yeah, just saying that. I would just want to point out one project to be aware of, and that I am aware of myself, that actually is a little bit connected to this, is VideoWiki. VideoWiki is also a candidate sister project for a few years already. And VideoWiki is a project where an attempt is being made to create video kind of equivalents of Wikipedia articles with the same principles, editable and sourced. So it's editable videos and it's videos that have sources. Actually, the videos have all the sources of the video at the end. I think that's a great effort, and I would love to play with it more. And I think it's a good, counterpart to Wikipedia. And I think it's definitely an answer to the generation that loves to watch videos. That said, I think for me, the audiovisual Spore or the visual Spore is really more about broader exploration, also beyond the encyclopedia, beyond the sourcing requirements. It can be part of it, but it can be a lot broader. And for me, it can also be indeed about working with still images, working with audio, working with galleries, etc., playlists, whatever, various formats. So ending with a wish list of, what if Wikispore would have all the whistles and bells? What would be the whistles and bells that would be nice to play with? I think of the visual Spores also a little bit of editable infographics. So of course, it would be nice to be able to do dynamic lists and dynamic galleries and dynamic content that can be, built on top of Wikidata and is dynamically, improved based on the data on Wikidata and on the structured data on Commons, which is there now for a year. I would also like to see integrated maps, integrated timelines. I can very well imagine that would be a nice addition, that you could create very dynamic, rich pages that include those elements, flexibly combinable. So almost like building blocks that you can just build a page with all these different elements. And an important one, I'm not a coder myself. I can do some Wikidata querying. I can kind of play with some tools. I can do a list area list, which is already quite advanced. But if all these things are editable and doable by non-coders, that would be super awesome. That's it for my medium, short, long talk. I hope people found it inspiring. I would love to see more experiments with the visual part, and let's make a little community there. Questions are welcome, or we can go to the next presentation, whatever people prefer.
Thanks. Let's bring in the group and have some more questions. People want to talk a little bit about your presentation. Thank you so much for finding an opportunity to experiment and play a little bit. And some good reviews from the talk people who want to binge watch Wikiflix, and yeah, it's very popular. It's a lot of good thoughts on uses of audio visual resources in the Wikimedia movement. Anyone want to share in this, either on the panel or in the chat? Feel free to ask any questions of Sandra.
I'm now quickly going through the chats to see what people have said.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting kind of comments that does not make it into Wikipedia from
Totally.
Jürgen. So yeah.
Yeah, Commons is such a treasure trove. You know, once you start to browse through it, it's amazing, really.
And I guess one of the question was about how we could actually use the gallery pages that already exist. And like technically you could do a lot there, but there's also the policies and the culture that we already have built up, and that people might be resistant in experimenting too much.
Exactly. Even with Wikidata-driven galleries, I'm very, very, very careful to roll these out massively on Commons, because I know that people are sometimes a little bit hesitant about Wikidata, just like many Wikipedias are. So I think if Commons is open to it, I would be super happy to go about it there. But maybe it's indeed deserves its own platform, or it can find a different home.
And hopefully there are different layers that connect through the magic of Wikidata and some other things. There are Wikispore links in the Commons info box through Wikidata, and hopefully that could make it maybe a smoother connection in the future. Okay. If there are no other questions, we might move on to, we'll have a approximately 30-minute presentation / discussion. I think this will be discussion heavy with Denny about Wikilambda / abstract Wikipedia. And I think Denny would welcome the panel to talk as well. Do you want to do some slides to start off, Denny?
I have some slides. We can try to see if they're useful.
Okay.
Let's see.
We'll do your slides first, and then we'll bring back the group.
Okay. Just let me. So there we go. If I click on present, will it still work?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. It's on screen.
Good. So the general idea of the abstract Wikipedia is that currently the cost of creating and maintaining Wikipedia is super high, right? We have about 20 million topics that have Wikipedia articles, and we have about 300 languages. So if we want to cover all those topics and all those languages, the workload would be about 20 million times 300, 6 billion. The promise that abstract Wikipedia makes, this is basically my elevator pitch, is that we turn this multiplication into an addition, which reduces the cost by 2 orders of magnitude, basically. So how do we want to do that? The rough idea is that we have this abstract Wikipedia using, as you can see on the left-hand side, using an abstract description of the sentence that we want to say. In this case, the sentence will be Wikipedia is the largest free encyclopedia. And this abstract Wikipedia then gets put through a renderer, which turns it into natural language. I'm obviously hand-waving over a lot of problematic stuff in all of these steps. And this text then may be used by the local Wikipedias to enrich the existing content if they want so. Now, the hope is that this abstract Wikipedia content is the same across languages. So if I go and switch to language, for example, to German, which is a very similar language to English, and therefore a little bit of cheating here again, we just need different renderers in order to get natural language text of the same content, which then can be used by the Wikipedias. The advantage is that we can create this content in a single place, that we can maintain this content in a single place, share it across more Wikipedias, share it much more than we currently do, and therefore have more coverage, more currency, and more correctness across the Wikipedias. this is particularly interesting for the smaller Wikipedias. I don't very much expect for the large Wikipedias to take too much of the content from the abstract Wikipedia for quite a long time. So again, the idea is we have one content object per article, we have one set of renderers per language, and we have a single set of constructors which are used to build up this abstract Wikipedia content. So those constructors are stored in a new wiki, and that's why this is so interesting for Wikispore, which the proposal calls Wikilambda, where we have the constructor set up and described. So why abstract Wikipedia? As I said, create and maintain articles in a language-independent way, allow smaller Wikipedias to show more knowledge, allow more people to contribute their knowledge in a way that can reach more people. So if someone from in Bengali wants to contribute knowledge about the hometown, about the home provinces, and make it available to the Japanese Wikipedia, today they would need to know how to write and read in Japanese. In the future, hopefully we can just create a content in abstract Wikipedia, and the Japanese Wikipedia might decide to integrate it into their local Wikipedia based on the content created by the people who know their own town best. Then have those functions created to translate knowledge to language, and start a new Wikimedia project for functions. So this is where we are currently. We have Wikipedia. Wikipedia can call the items in Wikidata and display it inside of the Wikipedia text. Additionally, we have in Wikidata also like themes. And in the future, then, the idea would be we have a new project, Wikilambda, which can also take the items where the content is being built from. The renderers are used and to turn this in natural language for the Wikipedias to use. It's built on the functions, types, and constructors in Wikilambda, and they in turn can call the lexicographical knowledge inside Wikidata. So the whole architecture is already has been planned when we extended the Wikidata with lexicographical knowledge, when we had the working items, in order to actually support this larger picture of generating articles inside of the Wikimedia infrastructure. Now, these mockups are super early ideas how it could look like, for example. So we could have something like succession, which is a sentence which says that, well, something followed something as something. And succession is has a predecessor, a successor. So we have the arguments of succession. We say what kind these arguments have to be, and this is supposed to be like cross-lingual, and whether this works out or not, we'll see. But this is roughly the idea. It returns a clause. We have renderers in different languages, and we have a form where you can try out these things to work. And then in certain languages, we have the actual implementation. So this is the English renderer for succession. And we see that it says, makes a sentence like successor, then the past tense of follow, predecessor as, role, on, date. And down we have a few examples how this could look like, and how errors could look like. Because in this case, for example, we forgot actually to use the reason clause, and so on. So again, this is just a very, very early prototype to inspire a little bit the idea of what we're actually trying to do here. Now, the nice thing is if we have these functions, then you could regard natural language generation as just one set of functions. You could at the same time also think about completely different functions, like, for example, very trivial functions like multiplication, and say, well, multiplication has 2 arguments, returns a positive integer. We have different implementations for it, and we can implement it in the wiki. So just like Wikidata was originally intended to support Wikipedia and the other Wikimedia projects, it has grown a lot since then, and it has it supports a lot of other use cases today. And we expect the same thing with this function wiki, that we get a large wiki with a lot of functions that can be used in a lot of different use cases, even if it's just for people coming here and actually entering numbers to get a calculation back. Obviously, for multiplication, this is not a particularly impressive example, but you can think about much more complex functions. So this whole thing is obviously crazy, but there are a few reasons for being optimistic. So first, we only have a single genre, encyclopedic text. We're not trying to cover the whole wealth of natural language. We also don't need to parse and understand language, so we don't have to understand every way that something can be expressed. It's just a single way that needs to be generated, which is far, far easier than parsing and understanding. Also, we can start so simple because the baseline in many, many languages is extremely low, unfortunately, so that we can already provide a lot of value with quite little effort for a lot of areas and for a lot of languages. The whole incentive store infrastructure of the system has a few very promising nooks and crannies that we're trying to turn, and the goal in general is very attractive, providing more knowledge to more people. So the next steps are, we're currently right now discussing where to actually have the discussions about the project. It seems Meta and Wikispore are the main competitors regarding the wiki, so you're welcome to join us on the mailing list and give your voice there. We will next soon trying to find a name for the different components of the projects, and start working on the wiki of function, and in parallel trying to collect the state of the art on natural language generation, making it accessible in a way that other people can understand what the options are for the second part of the project. So in the first part of the project, we'll focus on this wiki of functions, and this will form the basis for the second part of the project, where we deal with the knowledge representation and the natural language generation. So thank you for the opportunity to quickly present the project a little bit, and I want to open to discussions and questions.
Thank you. So please post your questions on the various streams, and I'm also going to re-add the people on our panel. So thank you, Denny. One thing that wait, did I take Denny off? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Denny.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for considering Wikispore. And I guess one thing that I've thought is even if we can represent the encyclopedic information in this structured way, as a longtime editor of Wikipedia, there are often disagreements about what goes there. And we often argue about it, and in English Wikipedia, we argue about it in English. In Wikidata, sometimes it's English, sometimes other things. And is there any thought to how to deal with the multilingual discussion issues?
Yes, there are a lot of thoughts about it, but no solution. So one thing is that the abstract Wikipedia is not meant to replace any local content. So the local Wikipedias will always have the opportunity to just override whatever the abstract Wikipedia says. And this is very intentional. And obviously I expect the local Wikipedias to have always the best content on the topics from the local views. So the abstract Wikipedia is really like the baseline content offered to those Wikipedias who do not have a local view on a specific topic yet, or don't plan to have that. For example, towns of faraway places, or mathematical concepts, and those are often not that highly disputed. And in general, actually, if you look at the Wikipedias, if you look at how currently it looks like, a lot of the discussions are happening on a very small set of the articles. So the largest, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure that more than 95% of all Wikipedia articles don't have any major debates, and the only thing that you see on their talk pages are just things like, I think we could improve this here, or here's a new source, or which are not actually disagreements. It's more like, how do we improve this page? And there are a few pages who basically pull all those disagreements together, or certain areas that do so. And these are often, again, localizable in specific communities. And okay, those happen. They don't have to happen in the abstract Wikipedia in the sense that we don't actually have to cover those topics in a way that represent both sides if it's necessary. So one way is, as I said, we can actually try to push those disagreements to the local Wikipedias. The second one, which is a bit bonkers, but let's see if this might work out, is to have some of the discussions actually happening using this, the Wikilambda mechanism itself, which has the advantage that it increases the cost of making the argument. and it decreases the emotional input when you do this argument. So it kind of puts a little bit of a break between you clicking edit and yelling at the other person. Also, it allows you only a certain amount of yelling if it's actually supported by by Wikilambda and so on. So this is bonkers. I don't have a clue if it will work out. I actually don't expect it will work out. I'm just putting it out as an idea, which could possibly work or not. The third point is, which I really wouldn't like to see happen, but it's kind of realistic, is that people will just revert to English if they can't find a different common language and just have it there, which means again that we have a certain way towards English, which is the way in a lot of Wikimedia projects. I would hope to avoid that, but I don't know if we can kind of avoid it. So there are a lot of ideas. There are quite a few problems with the whole thing. I think all the problems are small compared with the possible gain. And therefore it's worth it to still go ahead and try it out. But I would love to see more ideas at this, and discussions about how we can actually get to a place where we don't colonize smaller groups through stronger and bigger groups, and where we don't make dissenting voices disappear.
Thanks, Danny. Any thoughts from the panel? You have quite a few contributors here.
I love the idea of using the same language to actually make the comments. Like, it's so meta, but it also takes this, as you said, it slows it down. And I think there's been some like tests with comments on news sites where you like post have a quiz for like, did you actually read the article before you comment? This is sort of in that vein. Like, if I have to slow down so much that I can actually express myself so everyone can understand me, you really need to think hard about what you're trying to say and why.
Exactly, that's the idea there. But as said, I don't know if we can actually push the people to do this, on not try to avoid to other channels where can still yell at each other. So no idea if this can work out.
I think we have some other comments from the panel.
Hello, so thank you for your presentation. It was really a pleasure to see how abstract Wikipedia is developed. And I have two comments here. The first one is that this work on constructor, etc., I think that it has more than creating new content as an objective. It can work for machine translation, for example, of text, for example, for generating new knowledge from scratch, etc., etc. So I think the project is worth working on it. The second one is that I know there are many problems, mainly related of the difference between languages. Ones are SVO and the other are SOV, etc., etc. But I personally think that we can't move anywhere but up, because even if we fail to create something utopic, we can find something that can be useful for us to develop other projects. So it is worth working on it. It is worth developing. And I think we should all try to have something like this. And then with the work, with the progress, we can see if we can fail or we can succeed. But if we talk from the beginning about failure, etc., we cannot move. So that's all.
Thank you for the very encouraging words. Yes, I agree. As I keep saying, this project is completely risky. It has a few very bonkers ideas and so on. There is potential for failure in there, but I'm pretty sure that we will get something done that will be useful for the projects. Even if it doesn't do the whole wish list of what everyone imagines of what it can do. But I'm pretty sure we'll get to some point, and we'll push as far as we can. And if we fail, I'm very sure we will have a lot to learn. This is one of the reasons why actually developing this at the Wikimedia Foundation is so attractive, because we have to do everything in the open. So failure is extremely visible, it's very well documented, and people can actually use this to learn from it. And I'm super excited about that aspect too.
Thanks.
I have a question. Do you have any guesses to the number of sentences that would have to be supported? You know, the order of magnitude. Is it tens of thousands or millions or what?
So the guesses are around a few thousands, in the lower thousands. This is based on work in FrameNet and other works that show how much coverage they can do. With language, it's always a nice thing. There's something called Zipf's law, which basically states, and this is true in a lot of areas in language, that with a small number of constructors, you already get a lot of coverage on the head. And then each additional constructor starts adding less and less more value. Which
Sure, it's the 90-10 rule or something.
It's in this case it's called Zipf's rule, but it's similar to as an idea to 90-10 rule. And this is probably true here too. And we'll actually have to really figure out one thing which is a little bit problematic with all these analyses is that they assume, like, let's take at the current corpora and see how much of it is covered. Okay. The thing is here that we're creating the content from scratch, which means that we as authors of the content will often think within the restrictions of the system, which will actually allow us to explore a larger space of possibilities than if we do without the restrictions. Or put differently, well, if you start writing a text, you would never think about, you would probably never end up with if you write a text of a page, you would never end up with a text that doesn't have a letter E in it, for example, if you write in English. But you can write a whole novel without a letter E. So it is possible to work under these restrictions and still achieve certain goals. And I think something similar will happen here. We will create the constructors as we need them, as we miss them, and we will try to be flexible in the usage, and we'll see how far we get and how much we need to actually support. So my assumption is it's in the low thousands. If it gets bigger by an order of magnitude or two, we're in trouble. Then we won't get anywhere. If it gets smaller than that, I would be surprised, but very thankful, because this means that new languages can be supported with much less work.
Thank you, Danny. We have a question from Zico. So there's been the approach of Wikidata's beautiful resonator, the article placeholder, things like that, some things that different Wikimedians are familiar with from ways to implement, say, Wikidata in Wikipedia. Is Abstract Wikipedia a similar approach, but more elaborated, and how does it, I guess, compare the different models?
It should subsume it. So everything that's possible with Reasonator should be possible with this approach. Everything that's possible with article placeholder should be possible with this approach. And we'll probably start with something very similar to those things. But we definitively want to go beyond what Wikidata can express. So Wikidata is putting very, very stringent restrictions on what can be expressed in it at all. So Reasonator and article placeholder don't even have a chance to say something which isn't in Wikidata, obviously, because they're completely based on Wikidata. So the problem is not Reasonator or article placeholder at all. They're awesome. The problem is with Wikidata. Wikidata has a very limited expressibility. To give my favorite example, I looked on the article for Marie Curie in basically every language I could reasonably figure out what it's saying. And in almost all articles, within the first paragraph or two, it states somewhere that Marie Curie is the only scientist ever, or the only person ever to have received 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific categories. Which is a great fact, right? I mean, there's a reason why this is in every single translation of this article. And it's something that Wikidata can't express. There's no way that you can put on the Marie Curie page the information that she is the only person to ever had this honor. But we want to express this. So we have to move well beyond what can be said in Wikidata. And this is why we are introducing this new method to express this kind of information and to make it abstracted away from the language.
Thanks. I guess we have a question here. How I just don't, from Jürgen, I just don't understand how it would work in terms of contributing from a contributor content perspective to abstract Wikipedia. How would a contributor's workflow look like? What would the day look like? What would the average day look like in the day of the Wikilambda contributor? They say they say that they see a story in the news and they want to make sure it's represented in Wikilambda. How does that happen?
Right. So we will have a completely new user experience for maintaining and creating content in abstract Wikipedia. And there are several parts to that. So one part is, for example, we already have some content in abstract Wikipedia. How do we edit it? And this you can actually think about, well, we have this form-based representation of the content, and you can click and drag and edit in those things. And we obviously have to work a lot of on how this experience actually will turn out, and have discussions with potential users and tests and so on. So it will be different in the current system. It might have the advantage actually that it might be more geared towards mobile use and use with tapping use, which is kind of promising because a lot of our readers are moving to a mobile form factor. So coming there to a place where they can actually contribute on this level, it might be helpful to activate current editors, to activate editors that are currently not editors. Might work out. If we get it right, it might work out. It would be awesome. I'm not making promises, obviously, of getting it right, but we'll definitely try our best. Another approach that we're envisioning is a kind of approach where you have a text box where you just enter your text. Then we use a classifier, a machine learned classifier on that, trying to figure out potentials, how this could be represented in abstract representation. And you see then for each of those options, how these are in turn rendered in the languages that you understand. So you can choose in advance, like, okay, I speak those 3 languages, I'm entering in a specific language, and here now I see the options, and this is what it understands. And you can also go in and say, oh, you didn't get this part just right, we edit this in this option, you see, and then you choose, okay, this is the one thing that looked right to me, I store it and work on the next paragraph or the next sentence and so on. So there are a few ideas of how the UX will work out, but we want to make it as simple as possible to contribute. And I have some hope that, I mean, we always think Wikipedia is super simple to edit, right? But I tried to change something on the COVID article because one number in a table wasn't just quite right from the source. It just didn't fit to the source. After 20 minutes, and I think I understand the whole stack pretty well. After 20 minutes, I gave up. I didn't figure out actually how to make this change. So Wikipedia already has a certain barrier towards editing, which in some areas is higher than in others. And and this is what we're comparing to. We're not comparing to a mythical situation where it's super easy to actually contribute to Wikipedia. We're comparing to the reality of how easy it is actually to contribute to Wikipedia today, how easy will it be to contribute through abstract Wikipedia. And there might be situations where the one is easier, there might be situations where the other is easier. And and this is basically the space we'll be working in.
Thanks. Any other questions or thoughts from the panel? People want to share your abstract Wikipedia, Wikilambda ideas? It's okay if not. We have a busy schedule, but okay. Maybe we'll go.
I was just gonna say I'm looking forward to the day when people can just start writing in Wikilambda notation. Write their novels or whatever else, and you've got your instant translation.
That would be awesome. I'm not expecting so much novels, but for textbooks and for medical content, I could actually assume that that would be quite valuable. For novels, I still like to read my novels written by someone who actually has a feel for the language and can enjoy the beauty of the language, to be honest.
I hope someone takes that as a challenge, just like you mentioned, writing without an E.
Yes.
I'm sure someone will. Okay, maybe let's move on to our next macro talk. So Ilana, if you'd like to talk about Gynopedia and your role as a wiki founder and potential roles for other wikis joining Wikispore. If you want to, if you have some slides, you can put those up and we'll share them.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so my name is Ilana, and the reason I'm talking today is about 4 years ago, I started a wiki called Gynopedia. And I didn't really do it in the structure of any kind of network or organization. So I learned a lot, but I also learned it can be quite challenging to do wiki on your own. So that's why I think it's really exciting that something like Wikispore is coming about. So I'll walk you through a little bit of Gynopedia and some of the things I learned. So this is Gynopedia. As you can see, it's using MediaWiki software. And it functions kind of like Wikivoyage, and that's location-based. So you can go to a city like Seoul, and it focuses on information on women's healthcare access. So this page is translated into English and French because the Translate extension is installed. And you can get information on contraception. And sometimes there's translation, emergency contraception, STI treatment and testing, medications, menstrual products, gynecological exams, pregnancy, abortion, advocacy and counseling, if there's any additional resources, and references. And so the reason I created this was I just couldn't find anything like this kind of information online, and I was interested in wikis. I've done a little bit of wiki editing, but nothing super extensive, as well as open source software. And so in the process of doing it, I also learned that I need to learn a lot about how to bring on newcomers and how to let them know how things work. So I created some guides too, like how to contribute content. And I wanted to do something that was a bit more focused on Gynopedia because some of the general MediaWiki documentation, while being very extensive, can be a bit intimidating, I think, for newcomers. A little bit about moderation and how to use the translation tool as well. So there were 4 main challenges that I think I encountered specifically as a small wiki founder that I think Wikispore could address. So overall, it's a great process to create a small wiki. You learn so much, you can really passionately get into things you really care about, but it can be hard. So the first thing, of course, is around awareness. So when I created Gynopedia and I started talking to people, a lot of people were wondering, why does this look like Wikipedia? What can I do? Can I edit this? There was still a lot of general awareness around wikis that I was talking about. And I feel like if one were a part of a sort of network, then there could be a lot of that work done among a group of people rather than one person doing that alone. So that was talking to journalists, talking to nonprofits, talking to people on social media. And that was in part why I created some of these guides, so people can learn a bit more about how one could add content. And I also even shared some of the resources that I use for research, if people didn't know where to start in terms of research. So that was the first one. The second one was around editor retention. So people might have added a small edit here or there. It could be a little hard to convince people to keep on continually editing. So if you look at some pages, like if we go back to the Paris page, different people have edited, but I've done a lot of the editing, and I'm okay with doing that. I love this topic. It's important to me. I'm passionate about it. But as the wiki founder, I did a lot of the editing myself. So it can be a lot of work to convince people, especially on a small wiki, to stay on, keep on editing, build up that community. So again, being a part of a network, I think people could share resources. There could be broader awareness of the wiki. So that's the second one. The third thing that I want to share is kind of more, I guess, a technical side. So when I started, I did not know a ton about what extensions or gadgets I could use or what setup might be good. I didn't know about the Translate extension right away. I learned about that over time. So if there could be more of a knowledge exchange about resources and tools that could be especially useful for small wikis, I think that could be really, really great. And the last thing is just, I think about integration with the wider Wikimedia or Wiki world, in that I think that when one starts in Wiki initially, at least in my case, I was just really excited to get information out there, connect with people, see how it could become a sort of resource and platform. But over time, I was also curious about how and in what ways it could integrate with wikis in a wider sense. And that was a bit hard for me to know. I knew that Gynopedia was a bit different than some of the larger wikis, and that people could share information that was their own research and original research. It was a bit more experimental. It had a bit more of it had its own thing going on, so I didn't know in what way it could fit. So Wikispore, because it kind of is inclusive of experimental early stage wikis, I think could be a great resource for a wiki like Gynopedia or other wikis. And that's all for my presentation, and thank you.
Everyone found their way back, except for Richard.
Sorry, I apologize. You don't notice when you muted yourself. Yeah, thank you, Alana. Thanks for sharing your perspective as a wiki founder. Got some people like their presentation. If they have any questions or comments, feel free to share them in the YouTube/social media, or if anyone has any thoughts here. I did partially inspired by Alana. I started a page called Wiki Farmers on Wikispore to sort of share like that we are welcome to people who have start small wikis. So might as well just share that for a moment. This is the Wiki Farmers page. We welcome intrepid individuals and groups starting and maintaining specialized wikis, and welcome to bring their crops to fruition on Wikispore's gentle plot. And basically, we don't want commercial projects. We want something that is nonprofit and is integrated into Wikidata and can be easily linkable. And we have a nice picture of farmers market. So hopefully, people with your specialist wikis around the world can think about joining. Any thoughts about small wikis that might come together? If you can process this, yeah, go ahead.
I really like your focus on how to keep people continue to edit and how to work to build a community. Did you do anything else like trying to engage communication outside of the wiki, or even in real life, or in other pages and so on, in order to get kind of a community growth and more cohesion?
Yeah, so some of the early stuff I did was really social media based. I actually started when I was living in Hanoi, and I wanted to connect with people in a lot of different places in the world. So I found communities online that might be around women's health or women travelers, and I started just sharing links. So if there maybe was a group on women who lived in Vienna, I'd share the page on Vienna and see if anyone wanted to add content or contribute content. And through that, some journalists started contacting me. And then when it got some journal coverage and some publications, then more people started coming on. So that really helped with readership. I feel like that helped with people coming on to access the content more than edit. Editing it's consistently been a hurdle, but more people came. One thing that was helpful as well was a translators, I don't know if it was some sort of translators organization in France, found out about Gynopedia and how there was an interest in getting translators to come on. So the people who were kind of in the early stages of their career for translation and they wanted to gain more experience came on. So that's why there's a few pages that have translation into French as well, as that there was kind of a push for some French translators to come on. I've also directly emailed a lot of nonprofits. Sometimes there's nonprofits that are actually included on the page because they provide services that'll be relevant. So I'll sometimes reach out to them and say, hey, your nonprofit is included in this page, since you do a lot of work on the ground in terms of providing services for women. Can you let us know more about other nonprofits or what other resources you may have that you can recommend that are relevant? So try to do a lot of outreach and communication, but it's a bit tough because part of the reason I founded it is because a lot of this information isn't already super available. So some places have more information than others, but I'm still learning a lot about how to connect and, you know, find people both as editors and as people to just generally share resources.
Thanks.
And what do you think, how much of the problems in getting people involved and stay on board are, like, if you could put a number on it or a qualitative description, how much of those are due to social issues, like people getting along, having time and so on, and how much are due to the software and its user interface and, you know, learning wiki text and just being frustrated about this and so on?
All of it. So, I mean, first of all, the wiki covers sensitive topics for a lot of people. So not everyone's going to want to edit a page on abortion access or contraceptive access, and that's understandable. That's one. Two, I think as we all know, there's a gender gap in wiki contributions. This wiki is primarily geared toward topics for young women. So people will contribute, but a lot of the issues with underrepresented communities coming on wikis that we see in larger wikis are even more amplified in smaller wikis when we don't have the same resources to address them. So that's another factor. And yeah, wiki text is a bit of a learning curve. I have a guide for how to use it that I've written, but it's new for a lot of people. A lot of people might not trust themselves. So I think all those things are factors that play a role in what can be challenges.
Were you using visual editor?
So I don't have VE right now. Part of the reason has been, I think, there's a bit of an odd compatibility sometimes with Translate Extension and Visual Editor, but I want to have that worked out. That's actually one of my goals, to just get that figured out this year, hopefully, because I feel like that's really important for newcomers.
Thank you. Great to have a perspective from an intrepid wiki farmer. Okay, so I think we're going to move on to our next 10-minute talk from Turkey. If you'd like to gear up your presentation, and we can share it, and then I'll put it on screen. If you're using Chrome, you can share it from
there. Okay. So hello everybody. I think I have to present something that I was thinking about. It is about using Wikispore to propose a new generation of collaborative journalism platform. So as you know, we are in the information age, and we are now having more facts in every minute. The world is even changing, and only citizen journalism and collaborative journalism is the solution, as is allow everyone to report everything happening everywhere in near real time. So Wikinews has been proposed in 2004 as platform for that. But as it was curated by a limited community, it provided a poor coverage of world news and average update. As a consequence, the project had poor audience, and I think its whole structure has to be revisited. So the solution for me is Wikispore, particularly Event Spore, or a new project under Wikispore named the News Spore. The idea is to create a platform for collaborative journalism and make use of artificial intelligence to update and broaden its coverage. The platform should be structured and can be edited and enriched by machine, just like Wikidata. So how we can get the information to feed this kind of project? In fact, their RSS feeds exists for a long time, and I don't know why people didn't think about it. So RSS feeds is an XML formatted plain text that represents the articles of a newspaper or of an electronic magazine, etc., etc. So it can be easily extracted and processed using Python's XML libraries. As shown here in the example, the channel, the so-called channel, it gives the name of the newspaper of the source title and the description of the newspaper, and then it gives the metadata of each news item of the channel. So there is the title, the description, the site link, where you can access the article, and when it was published. So RSS feed have a common structure. They can be consequently aggregated and processed together in the so-called RSS corpus. And there is an interesting amount of information there for a newspaper name and description, titles, description and publication type, publication date, and site links of the articles. So how we can do that? So we can gather all the items of the RSS feeds into a global RSS feed or RSS corpus. Then we use AI to classify the items of RSS feeds into news, into facts, etc., etc. So the principle of doing that is to cluster RSS items having the same topic together, and then to create a Wikispore item for each topic. For example, a kidnapping story, for example, 9 cases of COVID-19 Tunisia, for example, and have each one of them down. So to do that, there are plenty of techniques. For example, topic modeling, semantic similarity, word embeddings, graph embeddings, POS tagging, semantic annotations, etc., etc. These techniques are not statistical and need a lexical resource, large-scale ontologies or taxonomy to work. RSS feed processing with this technique is commonly used in, for example, in news interfaces such as Google News. Okay, so the resource, the lexical resource we are thinking about is Wikidata, because Wikidata, as you know, is a collaborative large-scale knowledge base in RDF format, and it represents millions of concepts. For example, people, cities, buildings, countries, etc., as items. It represents the relation between the items as well and several characteristics of each item, such as the date of birth, etc., etc. And the most important characteristic is that it is available in multiple languages. So how can we structure the output? In fact, we can use Wikibase as the software for that, because it allows the multilingual assignment of labels and description for news items in multiple languages and the automatic enrichment of Wikispores by bots and even by quick statements, etc. So the data model I propose here is to assign for each news an ID and then a number. For example, in Wikidata, we can use item are assigned as an items in Wikidata. They are given a Q number, so we can get this idea and use it. The title, which is the equivalent of label in Wikidata. The summary, which is the equivalent of the description in Wikidata, but longer. We are talking about a natural language description of the fact in 255 characters or more, maybe 5 or 12, 512, maybe more. So it's up to the community to decide. And after the full article, which is written by the community, it is a regular Wikinews article. It can be assigned, for example, like this. in numbers and then slash and then the language code. And then each item is linked to the items, to the Wikidata items related to it. For example, it can be subject, Donald Trump, object, COVID-19, location, Minnesota, an action, for example, an historical or periodical event, Independence Day, etc., etc. After, we can assign for each item a publication date, the date when the fact happened, and last of all, we will assign for each item the items of the RSS feeds, the newspaper items that are corresponding to it in each language. In fact, we will use languages and source title as the qualifier for that. Okay, the conclusion here. So, Wikinews is not as active as it should be, and as it is too reliant on human efforts. It is the same, quite the same idea behind Wikilambda. And Wikispore is can be an excellent substitution to Wikinews, an easy development plan, and positive outcomes. So here are some references about what I was talking about. There is the article about Wikidata, the classical one of 2014, where our work as well about semantic similarity and how to use them to process data, etc. We're building ontology-based methods for semantic similarity, etc., etc. And there is the work of Mike Thelwall here. Mike Thelwall is John Tusola Prize Medals. Is one of the most genius scientists in library and information science about the RSS fields and how to process them, etc. And here you have an article, a recent one about the 2018 W3 conference about the use of deep learning and of graph embedding, etc., etc., for classifying news and assigning them to facts. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's add people back, and if people have comments. Thank you for giving some thought to Wikispore. In terms of, I know this parallels some work that you've been thinking about for a while, and some work that I've been thinking about for a while, and it's glad that those can come together. I'm also going to bring in Z, who's going to join us for the next talk. But if anyone has any thoughts on the sort of the journalism idea, I guess the part of the concept is to find ways that bots and humans can work together. So, I mean, if we could just, maybe, I guess one of the concepts here is like if we could find like a little like template that or a little base that the bot can help build, and then humans can build on top of it. Because if it's just bot, then it's not wiki. So hopefully we can find some of those human connections. And yeah, I hope we can have more experiments with that. Z, welcome. Z, welcome. Are you okay? Oh, whatever.
He looks frozen.
But Z, if you want to unfreeze yourself, you can join at some point. We're gonna shortly start 5-minute lightning talks. So we've had some 10-minute lightning talks. We have some 5-minute lightning talks. A couple people expressed some interest in 5-minute lightning talks and weren't quite sure if they could deliver them. If you do want to give a 5-minute lightning talk, let us know. So ping us in the chat or otherwise, and we'll help put you on air, presuming you have something reasonable to share. Any other thoughts about Wikinews and timelines and ways to represent journalism? If people want to share that, and how do you represent it on Wikidata is also a question, which I guess maybe some people on this call might be familiar with or have some ideas about. How do you represent a news item on Wikidata?
Well, potentially this could go into Wikinews. No, I mean Wikinews could make use of Wikidata for all that. I find it funny. It seems like everybody wants to replace Wikinews from Jimmy Wales on down. But yeah, I don't know if you've thought of that, of adding all this stuff directly into Wikinews?
Yes, of course. This can work. As you already know, the structured commons, they ameliorated a lot the Wikimedia Commons that had added some value to the work, etc., etc. So if we can implement kind of structured Wikinews to the Wikinews, it can have some added value, and it will add some news that are not represented before in Wikinews.
I hope I guess I would see Wikispore as platform agnostic. So you can try out your idea here, and maybe it'll be useful somewhere else later. I did actually talk to some Wikinews people about some ideas like this, and they were not big fans of it because it's a bit different from the established model, which is quite understandable. But perhaps even if we try it out at Wikispore and it works at Wikispore, people might want to use it at Wikinews in the future. And hopefully we can just be a place where people experiment with different ideas. Yeah. So thanks, Zico.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to have a 5-minute. Let me welcome Z. Z, are you with us? Say hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Okay, good. We want to make sure you joined us. So welcome Z. So Z's been working on the queer Spore and some other topics. And do you have a presentation, or just like a 5-minute presentation? Do you have some slides if you want to share, or you can just screen share a wiki page if you like?
I'll try to screen share my presentation.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just put that together, and I'll put you on screen by yourself for about 5 minutes.
So, okay. I'm not sure if you are seeing. Okay, now I see what you are seeing. So I'm not hearing you. This.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. See, if you want, you can press presentation mode, and it should work. On your.
Okay. I would, but just a second.
Or you can, well, whatever is quickest. Or you can maybe just scrolling on your screen. You can share a Chrome tab. That's easy. It's also an easy, better method.
I think I just gave the wrong screen for StreamYard to share. Again, second try.
If anyone else has a 5-minute lightning talk, please comment. I think Jan will join us. Perhaps Lane. Perhaps anyone else who wants to can. Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is. I go by Z. My real name is Željko Blače. It's a bit complicated to both spell and pronounce. I am coming from background of working in arts and culture as artist and kind of cultural organizer. Primarily in media field, primarily working with topics that relate to new media technologies, kind of critical perspectives, and also other things like sport and recreation. I've been one of the founders of Multimedia Institute in Croatia, in Zagreb, which is just turned 20 years very recently, and basically it's the organization that localized Creative Commons and help to some of the early work in the field of open content and kind of digital commons. I'm as of recently involved with several projects that are dealing with queer perspectives in Wikipedia or Wikimedia, more precisely. One of them is Not Found On. It's a kind of online wiki project that is trying to experiment with safer space, and it's governed by intersectional feminist queer principles, And it's kind of a small wiki, self-hosted, customized, and kind of very much trying to be under the radar. So rather than following the pattern of Wikipedia with full transparency and openness, it's trying to kind of deal with necessity of having some content and some wiki work be in more safe, even if it's just security through obscurity, but like at least in somewhat a safer space. I'm also a Wikimedian resident at Rijeka 2020 in a municipal library, which is the European City of Culture, and I was a contributor to Queering Wikipedia conference that was supposed to be on this year in May in Linz, but it moved to 2021. It was supposed to be the first LGBTIQ conference, and this is what actually got me enthusiastic to work a little bit closer to Wikimedia ecosystem rather than doing only wikis outside of this kind of organized and kind of more or less Wikipedia-centered world. This is where I'm currently, and kind of literally, I think this is the view you should be seeing soon from my cam. In kind of fairly remote place across the Faroes Island. And I was kind of interested in what's inside of the Spore can be a space to think of what could be the querying Wikipedia practices. And unlike what Sandra was saying before, there is maybe a bit of a mix-up of what is LGBT and what is queer. I think queering, as it's used in theory and in activism, at least in some activism, is more kind of proactive, critical work against norms and against kind of the mainstreaming and these kind of conformist tendencies that we are, of course, daily reproducing in society through technology and through other normative systems. And particularly what this means specifically to inside the technology and community, I think it's important to look at what kind of norms people follow when they are joining these communities, what kind of conditions they have to follow, and what kind of practices they take for granted. So in the festival that was organized in Linz in May, parallel to what was supposed to be a Queer Wikipedia conference, we did a workshop in which we were presenting Wikispace as a space of kind of content-specific publishing, in which users were basically encouraged to come up with their own methods of writing, in their own methods of kind of formulating ideas using media, rather than having fixed licenses, fixed methods, and fixed formats of what to present. And this is, it was called Not Found On, because it was dealing with this kind of normality of mainstream and kind of counter tendencies that we wanted to support, of people basically dealing with their own needs, which have different levels of I would say, vulnerability, or that would make them feel they are not ready to be presented in public space. So in a way, wiki a metaphor that historically used to be about doing fast and quick webs, and it lost its kind of dynamics in big wikis like Wikipedia is. We were thinking how one can do quick and dirty wiki work, but do it in a slow way, in a focus on content and care for each other. So it's basically at these themes that neutral point of view is super problematic, as the content gaps are super problematic, and how government models and assumptions that are embedded inside of the user interfaces, inside of different policies, are problematic for who thinks of themselves as other, outside of the I would say average user. This was the kind of a poster image for the workshop, and it was interesting. If you go to notfound.org, you will see that there is a kind of a manifesto and kind of commitment you have to sign through or go through before entering this space. Also, I was looking in one of the projects that is linked from the Wikispore inside of the template systems, in which I wanted to kind of prototype what could be the templates inside of the media wiki that would point to normalization tendencies. And this is very kind of common for someone who is a new submitter to wikis, to basically experience this overwhelming situation where you are constantly bombarded by notices that, you know, you did something wrong on commons with licensing, and that your content is disputed in one or the other way. Yes.
Would you like to share the queer spore directly, so we can just get a look at it? And
yeah.
We're running low on time.
Yeah.
You want me to share it?
Yeah, please.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Yes, we're running a little bit short on time.
Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to just basically have you check out, if you are interested, and kind of understand what is the difference in between doing just LGBT content and doing something what is critical wiki making from the queer perspective. And if you go to the there are links on different projects, like the first three things I was mentioning. The fourth project that has this overlaying fog was a kind of intervention inside of the established Editon event. And the last one is maybe the most interesting. You can start maybe the videos, Rachel, John, or Thomas, that I just produced recently, and they are on Commons. They are going to be launched soon. They're basically statements. You can run it. They're basically statements from different Wikimedians about how they experience Wikipedia as members of LGBT community and what are the issues they are facing.
Okay.
And it's just 2 minutes, so you can.
I don't think I can show it right now because it's a bit complicated. But thank you. And hopefully people can watch it on their own. Let's bring back folks. Any thoughts or questions for Z? For either from here, from the audience, at home. It's okay. It's a lot to take in. Thank you, Z. I think we have one more lightning talk, which is in the hopper, as we say in the showbiz, and I think that's from Jan. And Jan would like to talk about the relationship of I think Wikisource and Wikidata, and and Wikispore. We embrace all sister projects, so we welcome this lightning talk too. So if you do you want to put up your screen?
I think I did.
Oh yeah, I have to share it though.
Ah, there we go. Yes, so this starts way back before Wikispore, and it has some connections with Wikispore. Of course, this is on Wikisource, just regular scan. It's a newspaper from 1645, and it's produced by the Swedish state during wartime. So it's, of course, interesting from a research perspective. And it was digitized already in 1998, but only put up onto Wikisource in 2017. And that's where I came into the picture. And it's just a regular page you can see here. And then, of course, this is how it looks in the regular Wikisource interface. But of course, in this, every sort of section here is like a wartime report from one place. And they mention a lot of peoples and places. And of course, that would be interesting to tag in some sort of way to get more knowledge on what's actually in these reports. And this is not a new idea. I think librarians and archivists have been thinking about it for a long time. But on Wikisource, we tend not to want to mess too much with the presentation. So what we did instead, me and some of my friends, was to go somewhere else. And if Wikispore were around at the time, we would probably have used it. But instead, we turned to some collaborative editing software to just tag things and with what they were. And in that sense, we got links to Wikipedia and Wikidata. And from there, we actually put it on to the web on a WordPress. So you can see here that you have the post. And this is an entire site where you can actually see, and you can go read more, and the links goes to Wikipedia now. And underneath, you can scroll there. You can also see from where are these places and who were these people just collected from Wikidata and Wikipedia. And we sort of, and of course, when we had this all tagged, it enabled things like this, where you can actually see over time where the reports were going. So this is just a very basic pilot in how can you use this data if you tag it. And something else that did is you could do this sort of co-occurrence and see which people are mentioned with the other people. So it's sort of clustered. And if you go by frequency, you see, I think you get some sort of popularity graph for who were most mentioned in this paper. And we just did 1 year, the first year, 1645. And after this, this project went into some sort of hibernation. And until later this year, I picked it up again. And I was thinking, what if we could actually go and tag this on Wikidata? So in my sandbox on Wikisource, I took one of these that were already tagged in a way, and I made links to Wikidata, and I created a new template. I call this same as in Swedish, where you can actually tag something and say, yeah, this is this item, and this is the thing that should be tagged. And with a user script, then I could just flip it on, and you get all the links. And I think that's where we are right now. We're going to figure out if we want to go use this more widely and how we should do it on Swedish Wikisource for a start. But if you get inspired, please be in touch. And I think that's more or less my presentation.
Thank you. Let's bring people back. And did I forget anyone? No, I don't think so. Okay. Thanks. We got some love for Wikisource, some Wikisource love. Woo Wikisource. Wikisource exclamation point exclamation point. So some Wikisource love coming from the group. Any thoughts from the panel, or of the increasing variety of genres that people are working with Wikisource?
Just wanted to say, really cool work. It was really nice to see this demo, and the demo is very, very cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And there are, of course, like proper notations if you want to use it. Now I have just the basic wiki markup. We could go more nuts with this if we wanted to.
Do you have to hide it in order to make it palatable to the Wikisource community in standard view, or?
That was my approach to get the sort of the go-ahead to start experimenting with it. But it seems like the Swedish Wikisource community are like this idea. So maybe we will not hide it that much. We will see where we go.
Thanks. And we actually have one more lightning talk. So apologies for a mistake before. Yaron is going to share about Semantic Media Wiki and Cargo, and using the ability to use Cargo on a Wikimedia Wiki for the first time. So if you want to queue up your slides, if you have slides, Yaron?
I don't have slides. I'm just sharing my screen here.
Oh, sure, yeah. If you have your screen, share your screen, and I'll put it up front.
Okay, I'm sharing, I think.
You're not sharing yet.
Oh, no, I need to press the button. Okay.
You should share like an individual Chrome tag. That's the best way.
Oh, I see. Oops. Okay.
Ooh. Meanwhile, some Wikisource annotated Ulysses. That seems like would be very helpful. Okay, I think I see I'm going to add your screen, and I'm going to take you over now for 5 minutes so you can give your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. So Cargo is one of the extensions I've developed. I guess the reason we're talking about it is because there's a guy named Peter Meyer who wants to use it on one Wikispore Spore. I think the crisis one. I'm not sure, but it could certainly be useful for a bunch of the others. And he is the reason, I guess, we're talking about Cargo and not Semantic Media Wiki. Semantic Media Wiki was an extension that Denny is actually one of the two co-founders of. It's still widely in use. It was originally intended as, I guess you could say, the first draft of Wikidata. I'd like to think it was the first draft of both Wikidata and Cargo. Denny might have different thoughts about that, but it was very, very briefly, I guess you could say, it was too simple for use on Wikipedia, and so Wikidata was created. I would say it's too complex for use on regular MediaWiki sites, and which is why I created Cargo. But it's in wide use. I think Cargo is superior. Other people disagree. Anyway, this is Cargo. The extension basically lets you store data that's contained within info box template calls, and then query that data, display that within the wiki itself, and also export it and that kind of thing. So conceptually, it's similar to what Wikidata does and what Wikibase does, but it's quite a bit easier to use because it's tied in with templates, which are already standard part of wikis, and it lets you do all this querying and nice visualization directly within the wiki. So there's a whole page about the extension here on MediaWiki.org. Here is the list, just a subset of the wikis that are using Cargo at the moment. I sort of at random picked one of them. It's a wiki about the video game called Another Eden, which I know nothing about. But here is the display of all the data, all the Cargo tables. Each one of these essentially corresponds to a database table of information. So if we look at characters, there's a table here called characters. Let me click on all of these things. It's defined within a template called character, which if you know about infobox templates in Wikipedia, it's essentially that, except it also contains these Cargo related calls, Cargo declare, and then Cargo store later somewhere here. which enables all this other stuff. So here you can see the entire table. So basically each page that calls that template is now stored in this one overall table of information and has all of these fields. So just by putting those two calls in there, you've created a whole table worth of data. You can drill down based on all this data here, and this is all generated automatically by Cargo. So if we want to find a character who has, possesses a certain skill and belongs to a certain class, whatever all these things mean, you can keep drilling down and find your. Oh, that was not unplanned. There is a character called Denny. I don't know what that means. But yeah, and I'm not going to show that much in the way of visualization, but drill down itself. Okay, that one's not very exciting. Drill down itself does visualization. Well, here, let me show. Let me see what the timeline looks like if I take out these two skills. So in addition to these are just date-based visualizations. There's also maps for geo coordinates. Well, this is not very exciting. They all have the same release date, I guess. And for just regular numbers, you can do bar charts, pie charts, and for random text, you can do all sorts of things. Just display everything in a table. That's all done with a third. Let me see if I can just show this very briefly. That's all done with a third parser function called Cargo Query, and here there's actually an interface to let you do querying. Let's see. So if I just want to get an entire list of skills, actually, let me do this. This is unplanned, so this might fail completely. But if I just group here and then format this. Yeah, there's really a lot you can do. If I do a bar chart and let me order by count. So it's an SQL like interface. I guess you could call this the endpoint of this. Okay, cool. That actually worked. So here, this creates I've created a query so you can see what the most popular skills are, and then there's also this corresponding wiki text query that I can just put into any page and it'll display that pie chart on any page. So that's it. Yeah, you can.
Thanks.
You can end the.
Thanks, Jeroen.
Yeah.
Let's bring the panel back, and I'm sure people have some thoughts. Denny came up multiple times during this, so
he sure did.
Denny has some thoughts. Welcome. Any thoughts on Cargo and on the semantic MediaWiki history and potential uses for Wikispore?
It's obviously directly useful for what I'm doing. Like, that's a much better way to do the annotation than my simple wiki templates.
Well, okay, yeah. There's the question of how and whether Cargo should ever end up on Wikimedia Foundation wikis, which maybe this Wikispore thing will pose that question.
We're here to experiment. Yeah.
What? Sorry.
We're here to experiment.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the audience? Okay. I think we're.
Well, I guess I can plug my book if you want to read more about Cargo or anything else related.
Anyone else have any books to plug?
Come on, people, just recently updated.
We should have prepared better.
Oh yeah.
Maybe mugs or something.
I guess I'll share. This is a project. So in addition to thinking about experimentation with wikis, and I've also think that we should experiment a bit more with social tools in the Wikimedia movement. So this is a project I've been working with a little bit as a parallel to Wikispore. We got a lot of help from Amir Sarabdani working on. We have a video meeting platform that is hosted on the Wikimedia servers now. We have perhaps a chat platform that's coming soon. and hopefully we can host more things like conferences like this. I do have an idea for Wiki Week, which is was theoretically going to be at the beginning of August, but probably will be at some point in the future now. But congratulations, you were all the guinea pigs for Wiki Week. So this was a bit of an experiment to try to develop that idea a little bit and see if we can test it with relatively low resources and relatively low producer investment. So hopefully we can play more with that and have more Wikispore events to come. Okay, I guess we're gonna wrapping up. Any final thoughts from folks about Wikispore and Wikimedia and experimenting things? Maybe everyone gets a final word. Yeah, I'm gonna force you all to give a final word on Wikispore Day. So give us your final Wikispore Day message, and we'll start with Yaron.
Just one word, literally?
Yes. No. It can be like a sentence.
Without using E.
Without using the letter E, right. I would say Q574 and then Q3. No,
Sharp.
More wiki farms are always good, and if there's something that has any hint of Wikimedia Foundation or Wikimedia relationship, then that's great also. Yeah.
Thanks. Ilana.
Just that I'm really excited that we're talking about super small wikis and how they can grow. We all, of course, I think a lot of us love huge wikis too. That's how a lot of us got excited about wikis in the first place. But there's a lot of exciting opportunity to make a difference for underrepresented people and way of approaching our knowledge through small wikis.
Thank you. Z.
Yeah, I would maybe try to say something super serious. It's starting a project on small scale is a very special moment. Like when you can actually meet almost everyone and get to know almost everyone. And this really needs to be put to good use and to make the most of it, experimenting and doing wild and courageous stuff.
Thanks. Jan?
I just think it's so cool that we're experimenting more, allowing to try out things in environments where you can actually are allowed to fail. I think that's.
I'd love to fail. I'm an expert.
Yeah. No, but I think it's just trying out stuff. Not everything needs to succeed because not everything will, and if that's the bar, nothing will get done.
Yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So all platitudes like that are all true. Sandra.
Jan stole my thought. No, I also want to. I really hope that we get more people to experiment with us. It's nice to have a small community, but let it grow as well. And I have the feeling this is also a good moment to do it. Let me also give some deep thoughts. But, because of movement strategy now kind of, being settled in stone and definitely having the outcome that we should experiment as a movement with more formats, more knowledge to be expressed there. I think now is a really good time to have places like Wikispore, and Wikispore is a nice place. So I hope we slowly grow and we have more experiments there.
Thanks. Denny.
Yeah, I just wanted to
give a
say
final word.
Yes, so I just wanted to say thank you to you, Richard. Thank you for organizing the day. Thank you for setting it all up and moderating for the whole session. It must have been quite challenging. So thanks for doing this, and happy Wikispore Day, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks. Happy Wikispore Day. You can wikispore.org, join today. I want to give that out to Ed Sapiria was going to join, probably couldn't join today, but Ed Sapiria is also working on a social suite type of idea called Docs Plus. And so you can check that out. It combines Etherpad with video conferencing. And I want to wish everyone a fruitful Wikispore Day. And you please join our wiki and join our mailing list. And we have video meetings usually every other week. So thanks, everyone. Fruitful Wikispore Day.
Bye.